If you're an operations leader, let me tell you something you might not realize. You negotiate every single day. We're going to break down how to master this hidden skill because it's the one that truly defines your success. How many times have you had to have that conversation? The one where you have to tell a client their delivery date is, well, it's got to shift. Or what about this one? Trying to make the case to your boss that your team is completely underwater and you desperately need more people. Or maybe you've had to look at a service level agreement and say, there is just no way we can hit this. You know, these things feel like you're just putting out fires all day, don't they? Well, if you're thinking, yep, that's just the job, I want you to pause that thought. Because these aren't just tasks on a to-do list. Every single one of them is a high-stakes negotiation that really determines your success. And that's the big idea here. Your real job is negotiation. But here's the thing. It's not about winning arguments or just getting your way. It's about something way more important, strategically managing risk for the entire company. And this is absolutely crucial. When you don't have a strategy, you just become a human sponge. You absorb all the pressure coming from clients, from leadership, from everywhere. But your goal isn't to be a sponge. It's to find the underlying risk and move it to where it actually belongs. So, where do most of us go wrong? We fall into the oldest trap in the book. We negotiate from a fixed position. Just look at the difference here. The positional approach is like a brick wall. You say, we can't do this, or that's out of scope. It's just a dead end and it makes everyone defensive. But the shared risk approach, that builds a bridge. You reframe it from we can't to, okay, if we do this, here's the new risk we both share. So how do we want to handle that together? That one little change completely flips the dynamic of the conversation.
This is the mindset shift. You stop being the person who says no. Instead, you become the person who protects the success of the project, who protects the client's goals, and who protects the company. You become a partner, not an obstacle.
So how do we actually make this happen in the real world? Let's walk through a simple but really powerful framework you can start using right away. It's called RISE. RISE stands for Risk Clarification, Impact Framing, Shared Ownership, and Execution Clarity. Think of it as 4 steps to turn a potential conflict into a collaborative solution. Let's break down each one. First up, R for risk clarification. Now, before you even say a word, your number one job is to figure out the fears that are driving the whole conversation. Every single request, every demand, it's really just someone trying to avoid some kind of risk. Your job is to make those invisible risks visible to everyone. So this means you have to change the question in your own head. Don't focus on their demand. Instead, ask yourself, what is my client so afraid of that they're asking for this crazy timeline? And just as important, what am I afraid of if we actually do it? As soon as you realize they're scared of getting yelled at by stakeholders and you're scared of the system crashing, you're not talking about dates anymore. You're talking about managing fear. Next up, I for impact framing. This is where you take your team's operational reality and translate it into the only language the rest of the business really understands, business impact. Because let's be real, telling someone we're busy means absolutely nothing to them. Yeah, vague complaints are just noise, but a specific number, a number changes everything. I mean, think about it. We don't have the bandwidth is just a complaint, but saying a 4-week rollout increases our defect probability by 18 to 22%, well, that is a business case. You just frame the entire decision in terms of quality, cost, and customer confidence, and that's a language that leadership cannot ignore. And this leads us right into S for shared ownership. Once you've clarified the real risks and framed the impact with actual data, the entire conversation can shift. It's no longer a you versus me fight. It becomes a collaborative us versus the problem session. And here's a little psychological trick. People would much rather choose than be told what to do. So don't just present the problem. Give them structured options. For example, okay, option A gives you that fast timeline, but we'll have to cut back the scope. Option B delivers the full scope, but on the more realistic timeline. Now you've empowered them to make a trade-off, and they become a co-owner of the solution. And finally, E for execution clarity. Oh man, this step gets missed so often. A handshake agreement is worthless if it all falls apart a week later. The negotiation is not over until you've defined who's accountable, what assumptions you're all making, and exactly how and when you're going to check in. This is what makes the whole thing stick. Okay, so the theory is great, but let's see how RISE actually works when the pressure is on. Let's run through a classic scenario. Imagine this. The client is demanding you go live in 6 weeks, but your team says they need 10. The old you might have just said no. The new you applies RISE. You clarify the risks. Turns out they have a huge investor deadline, while you have a big system stability risk. You frame the impact. Rushing this could cause serious inaccuracies in their Q4 reporting. Then you offer shared ownership. How about a phased rollout? And finally, you get execution clarity with defined check-ins. The result? The client's urgent need is met, but your team's integrity is protected. That is what negotiation maturity looks like.
Which brings us to the last, and maybe the most important leadership shift you need to make. It's moving from a mindset of proving to a mindset of protecting.
You know, early in our careers, we think negotiation is all about proving that we're right and they're wrong. It's a battle of egos. But a truly strategic leader is playing a completely different game. Their goal isn't to win the argument. Their goal is to make the other person feel safe and even smart for agreeing with the solution you build together.
When you master this final shift, everything changes. You stop being a manager of timelines and tasks, and you start shaping business outcomes. You go from being a reactive part of the company to a truly strategic partner. And that, right there, is the real power of negotiation in operations.